So thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us for today's session. Uh, as we all understand that most of the organizations um, have been impacted by this unforeseen pandemic. Forget about organizations. We all as individuals uh, have been impacted by this COVID-19 situation. And all of us in our corporate life are, uh, or rather have been forced uh, to go to the new reality. Uh, and we have been leading teams. We have been part of teams, and the only option with all of us today is uh, working virtually. As we speak, probably the situation is improving, and all of us are praying that we get back uh, to the pre-March kind of situation. But to address uh, this new reality, one of the key components or one of the key leadership attributes is empathy. And that's what is the topic for discussion today. And we represent Right Management India team. We are a part of the Manpower Group, which is a world leader in innovative workforce solutions. We are a Fortune 500 company listed out of the New York Stock Exchange, headquartered out of Milwaukee in the United States. While Manpower, our parent company, is primarily into the recruitment space, we represent the consulting side of business, which is the talent solutions side, and that's what Right Management is. Uh, Over the last few decades, we have been partnering with clients across sectors in both talent management as well as career management space, and we strive to design and deliver solutions to our clients, to our uh, participants and candidates, uh, aligning talent strategy with business. That's what we do as an organization. A quick introduction about myself. My name is Somdeep. I work in the capacity of an associate vice president, consulting services with Right Management India. I lead the talent management and leadership development practice for Right Management based out of Mumbai. And I have my colleague with me today.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Ashwin Payal. Really happy to be here and to interact with all of you. Really looking forward for some great conversations. I have been working with Right Management for the past 5 years, and in the space of organization effectiveness and talent strategy, I am going to share some perspective on empathy and its role in the leadership in the current context.
Great. Thank you, Ashwin. And let's get into the discussion today. Let's start with two leaders, two leaders from completely different space of life. Any guesses who they are? Anyone? The first one is an easy guess. Anyone would like to attempt? First one or the second one?
Satya Nadella.
Satya Nadella. Great. Thank you. Who is the second one?
She the Prime Minister of New
Prime
Zealand.
Minister. Yeah.
Fantastic. What's her name? Any
Jacinda
guesses?
Ardern.
Jacinda.
Fantastic. Jacinda Ardern. Yes, yes. Let's see what they feel about and what they think empathy is. To start with, Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. According to him, empathy is core to innovation. To meet the unmet and unarticulated needs of customers, he feels there is no way innovation can happen if we don't listen. And he also says, not just listen to the words, but don't go deep what the needs are behind that. So I think empathy is core to innovation, and life's experiences, if you listen to and learn from, teaches you a lot. And shortly we'll look at a video as well of Satya Nadella. The second one, Jacinda Ardern. We all know that New Zealand as a country has been in the foremost of dealing with this COVID-19 situation. She says it takes courage and strength to be empathetic. And I'm very proud to be an empathetic, compassionately driven politician. She also says we teach kindness and empathy and compassion to our children, but then we somehow, when it comes to political leadership, we want a complete absence of that. So I am trying to chart a different path. So on one side, we see an iconic business leader, and on the other side, we see a modern day politician leading the country of New Zealand and what they feel about empathy as a subject. Uh, let's listen to a quick video and then we move on from there.
Your first child was born with cerebral palsy. He is now 21 years old. So how did you realize that was going to change your life, and how have you dealt with that issue?
Yeah, even I was 29 years old when Zain, our son, was born, and if you had even asked me maybe even an hour before he was born what was going through my head, it was all about, oh, is the nursery going to be ready? What's going to happen to our weekends now we have a son? And when will Anu, my wife, get back to a job and so on? But obviously everything changed that night. He was born because of an undetected in utero distress, asphyxiation, with severe brain damage, and that led to cerebral palsy, and he's quadriplegic now. The first, I would say, David, maybe even 2 years or more even, I was more about like, why did this happen to me? What happened to us? And all of these plans that I had are now all been thrown up in the air and changed. Whereas Anu, my wife, what came naturally to her as a mother was, she said, okay, I'm not going back to my job. I'm going to really care for my son, drive him around for the, therapy after therapy. And I watched that. Without schooling me, I got schooled that nothing happened to me. What happened was to my son, and that it was time for me to understand that, realize that, see life through his eyes, and then do my duty as a father. That, to me, perhaps, it didn't come in one moment. It's something that I think took time. But as I figured it out, it changed me, both as obviously a parent, but also who I am today and how I approach everything.
Now, your wife was trained as an architect.
That's right.
And she's given up doing that for a while.
That's right.
Now, you have two daughters. One of your daughters has severe learning disabilities as well. And how did that affect you and your wife?
In fact, one of the things that happened because of our son was we built up a tremendous community of people, whether this was the therapists or other parents with, of children with disabilities. And so we were involved in that community. By the time our youngest daughter came into our lives, I must say we had the richness of this community to support us. And it turned, when we recognized very early on, and Anu and I, and Anu in particular, was very quick to realize that she will need additional help. And so we found this school actually in Vancouver, BC, which was all around neuroplasticity. The idea was you can train your brain to learn, so instead of compensating. And so we decided that, you know what, we're going to move the family to Vancouver. Zain was going to stay with me in Seattle. My daughters and my wife were going to live in Vancouver. We were going to commute again over the weekends. But the thing that all, quite honestly, that is where it came all naturally to us, because in some sense, Zain had taught us what it takes to give people with disabilities the best shot, and so it's something that we took on.
And your son lives with you now.
Yes.
And one of the qualities that you say you got from all this was empathy, and that the result of having empathy made you a better CEO and a better person. Is that fair?
Yeah, in fact, when I look at empathy, and most people think empathy is just something that you reserve, for your life and your family and your friends or what have you. But the reality is, I think it's an existential priority for a business. Because if you look at it, like, what is our business? Our business is to meet unmet, unarticulated needs of customers. There is no way our innovation to meet unmet, unarticulated needs is going to come about if we don't listen. Not just listen to the words, but don't go deep to understand what the needs are behind it. So I think empathy is core to innovation. And life's experience, if you listen and you learn from, teaches you. I wouldn't claim, as I've sort of even talked about it, any innate capability of empathy that I was born with. If anything, it's life that has taught me. And if anything, my pursuit is every year, is there growing sense of empathy for people around me?
But just to summarize what Satya Nadella talks about in this video is, and it's a very unfortunate incident that he had to undergo in his personal life. And once his son was born, suddenly he realized that there was some physical disability with which he was born. And while he was planning about his future and all the great things he and his wife would experience after the birth of his son, and suddenly the world crashed in front of him. And then he talks about how his wife displayed a completely different kind of behavior than what he did. And that was the initiation of the ability to learn to empathize with different situations, with different people. And that's what he says towards the end of the video, that empathy is something which can also be learned. And he talks about the different dimensions of empathy, which he has recommended to all his staff, because as we saw on the earlier slide, he fundamentally believes that empathy is core to innovation. And for Microsoft as an organization which thrives on innovation, they need to understand customer needs and build their solutions accordingly. Empathy becomes a key lever to that as well. So what is empathy? And what are some of the dimensions of empathy? What do we need to do in today's world while dealing with this virtual reality? And how can we bring in empathy at workplace? Or great. So do we need empathy? And that's a poll which we had done over the last couple of days with the participants. And we had named certain professionals, certain careers, wherein there is a large-scale perception that empathy may not be required.
Yeah, and I think most of us chose to say that empathy is a critical component, when it comes to success, in a professional career. While some of us did identify, and that's 21% of the population, that did identify that army officers may not require empathy when they, are operating in their professional career. Maybe sometimes neurosurgeons won't require. some of you have to say that CFOs of a firm may succeed without empathy, and some feel that jailers also may succeed without an empathy. However, I think a large part of this population, around 63%, believes that empathy is essential across these different walks of life. Now, an interesting point that I wanted to share here was that while we are saying that 63% of us are saying that empathy is really, really critical across different work verticals, and maybe it also applies to the third choice, which is CFO of a firm. One of the recent surveys done by HBR spoke about employees saying about the quality of empathy in their leadership, and 70% of people said that CFO of their firm does not possess an empathy. So if you look at it, when we are looking at empathy as a concept, we may really really relate to it when we are looking at it from the outside and say, yeah, empathy is really critical. Empathy is going to be essential for us to succeed. But when we get into our professional roles, when we get into our organizations, when we get into day-to-day jobs and interactions, do we really see that empathy getting in practice? How much role do we have as leaders in terms of ensuring that empathy is present in our conversations across different walks of life? How many of us are consciously working towards having empathic conversations and trying to ensure that employee well-being is taken care of? So that's something that we would want to discuss now going forward.
So empathy is about understanding others while we develop closer relationships across stakeholders, be it in our personal life or be it in our professional life. The broad three requirements of empathy are listening and openness and understanding. When we understand our team, there is a higher probability of us understanding the challenges that lie ahead of us. And finally, empathy takes work. So, what do the famous or great psychologists have to say about empathy as a subject? According to Daniel Goleman and Paul Ekman, empathy is the ability to understand and share the thoughts or feelings of each other. And to feel and display empathy, it's not necessary to share the same experience or circumstance as others. Rather, empathy is an attempt to better understand the other person by getting to know their perspective. And the word on which we would like to highlight today is their. It's not our perspective. And knowingly, unknowingly, all of us as individuals, we love to share our thoughts. We love to share what we think. But having said that, it takes more effort. It takes more stretching ourselves to ensure that we consider the other's perspective rather than always focusing on my or our perspective. And that's the broad pillar under the word empathy. So are there types of empathy? And again, referring to these two gentlemen, Daniel Goleman and Paul Ekman, they have done a fantastic job in categorizing the three types of empathy. The first is something called cognitive empathy. And this is something which is absolutely essential across all professionals, across all job roles. Few minutes ago, Ashwin was talking about some of these job roles, be it a jailer or be it a neurosurgeon. There is be it the CFO of any organization. And there could be some other job roles as well, wherein there is a larger perception that empathy is not required. But having said that, research says that cognitive empathy, the ability to understand how you see things, what your perspective is, it's a bare necessity. And it holds true across all professions, across all poles of life. Moving on, the second aspect of empathy, which is the emotional empathy, it's a more higher order empathy per se, and it corresponds to the second part of our brain, which is the social brain, and that comes into the picture when we are able to sense immediately what the other person is feeling, and the ability to feel that pain immediately when the other person is describing that, when your heart pains listening to somebody else's heart, that's emotional empathy. And that is something which helps us build a rapport with others. Moving on from emotional empathy to the final component or the type of empathy which Dr. Daniel Goleman talks about is also called empathetic concern or compassionate empathy. This is not only about feeling or understanding others' perspectives, but actually moving into the action stage. How do we actually help the other person? We not only feel the pain, but we actually try to help the other person come out of that emotional state. And the closest comparison we can do this is the parents' love for a child. Typically, all of us have experienced this in our lives, be it as children or be it as parents. Uh, Parents can go up to any extent to ensure their kids, their children, they stay happy, they overcome all challenges in life. Now, coming back to how do we correlate this to our real life work state? Most managers, most leaders would be somewhere in the second state. As we already talked about the fact that the cognitive empathy is a bare minimum necessity which all leaders and managers we have to display. There is no option. If it isn't there, that leads to distrust, that leads to uh, pain, that leads to attrition, that leads to lack of productivity. So that's something which is more understood. But leaders and managers, we typically occupy the emotional empathy state. And the challenge or the dichotomy comes when our team members, the people reporting into us, they expect all the leaders and managers to be at stage three, which is the compassionate empathy. Team members always knowingly, unknowingly have this belief that my manager, my boss should be able to help me solve all problems. And when that doesn't happen, straight away there is disengagement, there is dissatisfaction, and we hear things like, my boss does not understand me, my manager does not support me.
So, what really helps a leader differentiate from other leaders is his ability to be in both the states of emotional empathy and compassionate empathy, and balance out the conversations and the relationships that he or she will have when he's working with his teams. There are going to be times when the manager has to be really practical and take decisions which are relevant to the business. But at the same time, if the leader fails to somewhere transition in the space of compassionate empathy and relate to what the employee is feeling, even if a decision is practical or it's not in the favor of the employee, and how does he make the employee align to the whole thought process? That is where a real differentiation can be created by leaders. And that is the mark of a leader who is able to transition smoothly from an emotional empathy to a compassionate empathy space, and help the employee or a team member or a colleague understand the situation and move forward.
And what actually also helps, Ashwin, I feel, is that we need to be transparent. If the boss or the manager is not able to help the subordinate in a certain situation, we can just go and tell this to my subordinate that that there are certain things which I can help you with. There are certain things you need to manage for yourself, and then that expectation setting happens in such a way that the subordinate also feels that yes, these are certain things I would be responsible for, I am accountable for, and my boss or my manager may not be in a position to help me out, so I need to figure out a solution for myself. Great. uh, so and this is something which we hear day in, day out. How do you put yourself in somebody else's shoes? Uh, is it uh, very simple? Yes, it looks simple, but having said that, it takes a lot of effort. Uh, Again, the four quadrants, the words which I mentioned, listening more and speaking less, waiting to speak, be accepting, reminding oneself that everyone has challenges to face. These are again simple English words, but all of us, we would have experienced this in our life. It's not that easy. It's not that simple. It requires practice. It requires a lot of effort to accept that somebody else may not be in that situation. So, for example, uh, let's say I report into Ashwin, and Ashwin as a manager expects me to be available for a call at a certain time on the during the day, let's say 2 o'clock, and he schedules a review call with me every day at 2 o'clock. Now, probably he does not understand my schedule. What does 2 o'clock suit my schedule, or 2:30 would be better? Because I may have a kid at home, and let's say I have a working wife who also has a key deliverable at that point of time, and maybe there's a situation that 2 to 2:30 is a time wherein I have to put my kid to sleep. So is 2:30 a better time to schedule a review call with Ashwin? Maybe, maybe not. So probably what would help is Ashwin tries to understand and takes others' perspectives, and then we finalize that review call every day. We are not saying that we should cancel the call. The call should happen. But can we look at a more mutually suitable time if that review call needs to be scheduled? Or can we look at a little flexibility? One day we can have at 1 o'clock, the other day we can have at 1:30, the third day we can have at 2 o'clock. Yeah.
So I think what Som was talking about, the ability of a leader to be, really flexible and understand and accept the situation as it is. And if you look at it, and if we want to correlate it with, the work environment in which we work, the review meetings that we do, the conversations that we have with our employees, I think most of the time, one of the biggest feedback that we've got from team members when we interact with them and understand what the manager can do better is they say that the manager needs to probably be more accepting. And here I wanted to share a model by Derek Gaunt, and it talks about the levels of listening. It talks about the levels of listening that a manager has, or a leader has, or any individual can have, and it talks about how really can you ensure that you become an empathic leader when you are having conversations. Most of the times, what we do is listen to get a gist of it, uh, and the idea is to listen to see whether what I feel is the whole situation or my understanding of the situation, is there an alignment with what the other person is saying? Maybe if there are leaders who typically would want to also, really create, a conversation where they would want to rebut or give a response to whatever facts or figures are being shared with me, and what kind of response do I want to give? Those are the thought processes that go when somebody is talking to us, and that's a natural response of of human beings when they are having communication. The next level is where a leader is able to listen for the logic that is being provided by somebody who is having a conversation with it. And a really great leader is somebody who is able to understand uh, the emotion or the point of view that the individual is trying to say, or put forward. And this is what has been a differentiator of leaders who come across as great leaders, or people who are able to really make a difference in the life of people, or when they're having conversations. I think the constant effort that leaders need to uh, put is into trying to listen deeper into what the conversation is all about. Understand the point of view that the individual is sharing, appreciate it, accept the whole point, and we may not need to, we may not need to agree, but accepting the point of view is something that becomes a key lever to have conversations which are more meaningful and more productive.
Great. So we have been talking about empathy for the last 10-15 minutes. But now is the time, uh, in the today's context, while leading virtual teams, empathy takes a more center stage than anything else. As Socrates says, let he who would move the world first move himself. So we as managers, we as leaders, we need to take the first step ourselves and strongly leverage all levels of empathy, be it cognitive, be it emotional, or be it compassionate in these tough times which all of us are going through.
Now, when it comes to the role of a leader, and the role of a leader in the current context, when we are really struggling to work, let's say, from home, or in a society where social distancing has become a norm, uh, there are certain hygiene factors that we need to ensure are taken care of when we are having interactions with our stakeholders, to ensure that they are comfortable, they are able to produce and perform at the best, and they are also able to understand that we are there for them for the whole time. What you see on screen is a summary of things that a leader can do to come across as more empathetic. These are not. This is not something which is a very rare knowledge. This is something which is we know, all of us. We all of us know that this is something we need to do. We need to be more flexible with the people we work with. We need to set boundaries, and we need to set working times when we will interact, when we will not interact. We need to ensure that we meet more frequently, have conversations more frequently, listen more, be more informed about what the person is going through, not going through, be more transparent about the conversations we want to have. Now, while we know all these, I think the common denominator for all these things that one can do to be an empathetic leader is uh, plan out more as to what we want to achieve out of the whole review meeting, or the conversation, or a interaction that we were doing with a colleague. Plan out for more, understand what situation, or what context the individual is operating in, and then try and work towards a common goal. If we are not able to really keep that in mind and have conversations, uh, we will always fail to be flexible. We will always fail to understand the boundaries of work that will be there. We'll always, have lesson less opportunity to understand what the individual may not be facing, and we may not be able to provide them with what they need to be successful. So these are some of the common things that leaders can practice. And then, once we are able to provide the hygiene factors that is there, that are required to make people perform and make them really feel connected with the leader, the next step comes about dealing with our own biases. Now, when we say biases, typically there are two types of conversations or feelings that we've encountered with. When we say biases, leaders will say, yes, we know about biases. We know, yeah, biases is something that is there, but I am aware of biases, so I will not be somebody who will be, getting affected by biases. The other is completely saying that, okay, you know what, I will always be, when it comes to biases, I may not have a problem with biases. Somebody else may have a bias against me. So if you look at bias as a concept, any kind of bias comes into the human mind because there is lack of evidence or data, or there is a particular data or a particular amount of evidence that is available to me. That is where my mind will process that data and create a perception around the whole situation. And that perception is nothing but the bias that I may come with. Now, when it comes to biases, it may also be critical to really accept the fact that as a human being, all of us will always be prone to have biases. All of us will always be, we may fall, as a prey to this, to this emotion or feeling of having a particular amount of perception for an individual that we're working with, for a set of people that we're working with, and so on. And that is where the idea is to be aware of what kind of biases are creeping into the conversations and try and minimize them. Is it possible to reduce the biases to zero? Very, very difficult. Maybe the Dalai Lama can do that, but is it possible on a daily basis when we are working in environments which are which are uncertain, in times which are anxious? There's a lot of fear and there's a lot of stress that is there in our conversations, and a lot of uncertainty with the future that is there. So maybe we may not be able to do away with biases completely, but a knowledge of which kind of biases can creep in a conversation will help us always make sure that the conversations are more productive in nature. Some of the biases that we have put on the screen for you to consider are, an affinity bias, the tendency to warm up to people whom you feel that you are like, who are like yourself. So yeah, somebody, and it may be as simple as somebody coming from a similar region, somebody who has a similar family structure, maybe having a bias. So you'll always, these are conversations that people will say, oh yeah, you know what, bachelors are more prone to work late in the night. It's okay to work with, tell my team member to work a bit late because he's a bachelor. How does it matter? He doesn't have a family to really, look after. Then there's also something which is called as halo effect, which talks about, you feeling that this person is really, really good because you like them. So anything that comes from that individual is really good. This is where, an individual or a team member who would have put a greater effort in the work to be done, but does not get a praise from the manager because the manager has a halo effect for, let's say, team member 2. This is where the crack will come into the relationships or the conversations, and that is where the manager's ability to really connect with the team member 1 and make him perform going forward will be a challenge. Then there is a bias which talks about perception, that maybe and it talks about the tendency to believe about one thing about a group or people, and this typically are stereotypes that we carry, these stereotypes can come from region that we come with, what kind of language we speak, and so on. Then there is a confirmation bias, which there are. You will have certain experiences and certain assumptions about individuals. So everything that is done is is seen in that light. The idea is to really you know say that okay, yeah, these people will always be behaving like this. Um, uh, the tendency to typically not be able to fit in into a group or holding back thoughts or opinions is something that also comes as a group thing. Now, when we are working in teams, these are the common biases that teams will have to deal with. The manager will have to be the person who will have to sort these biases out and work with teams. The idea is again to share that biases will never go away. They are going to be a part of the conversations we do. We will always be prone to form an opinion, have a personal conversation about an individual or a team. Uh, uh, you know, uh, but the more we are aware of the situation and the biases that may come in, the better capability will we have as a leader to really be objective and place ourselves in the others' shoes and appreciate what they're doing. Now, the next slide talks about certain situations that would have been you would have seen more frequently in the past 3 to 4 months, where people would have told that probably one of their family members is not keeping well. Uh, some of them may have, some of you or some of us would have got exposed to infection, or people who have been quarantined. Uh, a lot of anxiety about what future is going to be, how things are happening. A lot of conversations are there around outplacement happening. A lot of conversations are about restructuring happening, businesses shutting down, and a lot of medical conditions are cropping apart from the current COVID infection, which all of us were completely unprepared to deal with. How are we trying to deal with? How are we trying to have conversations with leaders, with our people, by keeping all this thing in mind is a point of reflection for all of us. Um, uh, Here I would want to take a pause, and if somebody wants to share an experience, uh, somebody wants to talk about if they faced a similar situation and how they dealt with it, how did it lead to a greater bonding in the team? We'll be happy to hear that.
Basically, for two, where someone is worried about the future, I mean, this is something we don't control, right? My example to my team has always been the sign in front of your office may say company A or company B. Doesn't really matter. What you take with you is the skills you learn. I think that's more important. Things not in our control, why worry? Focus on what you learn, focus on what you take. You take those skills are going to apply regardless of the name board in front of your office, as an example. And that's how you motivate and get them away from that negative thought.
Thanks a lot, Dilip. Really nice thought for all of us to reflect on. I really completely agree. Changing the goalpost for the conversation and appreciating that what we bring, as an individual to the organization will always be, a key, lever to motivate people when they are facing anxiety with respect to the workspace. Here, I would also want to share one instance, and I would want to share about a friend of mine who was working in the media industry, and we were having a conversation the other day, a week back, and she told me that what, my boss called me up in the morning at around 7:30 and said we need to meet up at 8 o'clock in the morning. There's an urgent requirement that has come out. We need to figure out how do we address the whole situation, and then probably we will reconvene at 1 o'clock once you've worked on the data and you've worked on the presentation and shared with the team. We'll reconvene at 1 o'clock and we will present it to the management. And the poor lady started working at 8 o'clock in the morning, spent 4 or 5 hours on the presentation, and the manager logs in at 1 o'clock and says, what, guys, sorry, I was not available because I had stepped out for some work. He said, okay, let's start the presentation. The presentation started, they went through 50 slides that were supposed to be, presented to the management. And then the manager says, this entire presentation, what you've created, we may skip showing this to the management because I don't think now the hypothesis stands after looking at all the data. So let's do it this way. Let me just, prepare a couple of slides and I will show it to the management. And he logged off the call. Now, imagine what the employee would be going through. The entire conversation after that we had was about, why is he trying to encroach on my space? Why is he trying to, tell us something that is not relevant? Was it not relevant? I would not really believe so. Maybe the manager thought that hypothesis needed to be studied. Could he have handled the conversation better, or could he have said that we will not want to really go ahead with this presentation in a better way? Possibly. There's always a scope to say that yes, he could have had that conversation. He could have told the team that guys, really great job. You did really what you could, but this hypothesis doesn't stand when you look at the evidences now.
Great. So, few tips on how can we manage such conversations in a more effective way. How can we ensure that our team members do not feel the way Ashwin's friend would have felt after the conversation with the manager. So paying attention to the speaker, not being judgmental, being more tolerant. If required, can we look at paraphrasing to understand the other person's perspective? How open are we to ask questions? And I think this is something which we have been realizing across all assignments as well, and then be it in our while dealing with our internal people. There is a certain there is a tendency or a belief that if I ask question, then my manager would feel that I do not know it, and my manager would have a perception about me that I am not good enough. Uh, so not asking questions, not clarifying doubts is something which we have felt, we have realized that that impacts all of us, be it manager or be it subordinates. Moving on.
So, this is a slide that we typically, work with leaders with when it comes to dealing with challenges of restructuring of businesses and so on. And if you look at it, it's divided into 3 phases. The first talks about when a human being faces a crisis. The first response is the denial stage, where there's a lot of shock and stress, a lot of feeling of anger, frustration, and confusion. And I am sure that all of us went through this in the months of April, May, and June. A lot of frustration, a lot of anxiety was it what we dealt with. Now, if I look at the different types of businesses that we've been interacting with, probably we are in the neutral zone. We are in the zone where we know that there's a lot of ambiguity, we know that there's a lot of discomfort, but we've accepted the situation. We've said that, okay, yeah, we have to move forward like this. We have to ensure that we keep on moving forward or keep on performing. The key with teams who are able to churn business results and business performance in such crisis also is their ability to transition from the stage 1 to quickly and move into the stage 3. And this is where the role of the manager becomes very, very critical. See, most of us know that we are going to be facing this situation for the next 6 months. Businesses are going to suffer, businesses are not going to perform, the customers are not going to spend money. In such a situation, the more acceptance to and the more open that we are to different types of ideas and risk-taking and optimism that the team could create, the more performance could come in. And this is where the role of the manager becomes very, very critical, because the entire context in which the team is going to be performing, that context is set by the manager, and the manager's role
in setting that context cannot be complete till the time he is able to understand what each individual is going through. What is an individual in the denial phase? Is the individual still in the denial phase? Is he still in the neutral phase? And then maybe some amount of effort has to be given to ensure that that individual comes into the third stage of new beginning. Maybe all of us are available, or the entire team is present in the new beginning phase, and then the context in which we operate becomes much more faster to perform in, and that's where the manager can then take that much of risk and go forward. But if, let's say, 50% of the team is in stage 1, so 25 is in stage 2, how do we perform as a unit? Then if the manager himself thinks that, yeah, I'm in the phase of new beginning, and let's talk about innovation and new ideas, what we're going to do, he is going to ensure that the team is set up for a failure, because if 50% of the team
there is one manager who straight away calls for a team meeting and says that our performance was not up to the mark for the last quarter. We all need to pull up our socks and ensure that we make up over the next quarter. And there is a second manager who comes and says that all of us, as Ashwin mentioned, that we as a team, how can we first reach the neutral zone? All of us, we understand what the context is, that what the performance has been, and then how all of us together can look at new ideas, look at optimism coming into the picture, look at creating a vision for the team, look at setting targets or goals for the team together. And it's not only the responsibility of the manager, but it's also the responsibility of the entire team to ensure that how we perform better over the next quarter. So the way the manager positions this to the team could be a make or break for the team performance going forward. And the biggest, or rather the two most important elements, if I have to say, which can bring this, one is emotion and second is change. And these are the two main factors that could make the communication easier rather than difficult, especially during times of stress.
So now, when we are looking at having, the team perform better in such a situation, a lot of conversations that you would have already heard is about building trust and working together when we are working remotely or working with a team which is, not able to interact more as frequently as they could have. I think if you look at the concept of trust, trust is always absent when fear is present. The moment you take away fear from any conversation or any interaction or any situation, trust will automatically creep in. So a lot of leaders that we interact with say, I don't know how to create trust. Well, you cannot create trust out of nothing. Trust can only exist when you are able to remove the fear of uncertainty that is there, impact that the employee cannot create in such situations, challenges that the employee is facing at his or own. And these are some of the things that what you see on the screen are some of the things that can be done to remove the fear that our employees or our team members may be facing in these times, so that trust can get built up.
A quick model for everyone to refer to. This is something which we call the trust model. And there are three broad dimensions through which this can be built. There is the first dimension, which talks about communication trust, which clearly, again, it's more of a responsibility of a manager about whether he or she is sharing the appropriate information with the team. In case there is a bad news, is the manager able to proactively share that? Or it can be true from the subordinate end as well. So across stakeholders, how we are able to ensure trust in the communication. The second dimension is about the capability or the competence trust, getting the right things done, having the right attitude, acknowledging other people's contributions and talents. If somebody has given an idea, how can we acknowledge that this is person A's idea and that has helped us achieve something? Learning from mistake, I think that's mentioned as the last bullet point in the second bucket. But I think learning from mistakes is a great competence to have, and that also leads to ensuring that trust is there. And finally comes the trust of character. And that's equally important in building honest, transparent relationships, especially between the manager and the team member. Let's say there is an agreement in place between the both of them, and it's the responsibility of both to ensure that that agreement is met, the commitment is met. In case there is a challenge of not meeting the commitment, then there should be a communication that yes, I had committed this, but I have not been able to deliver this, and this is the reason. I may need help, I may need more time. There could be a reason to it, but in case that commitment is not met, yes, there would be gap in the trust level between the manager as well as the subordinate. There is a video which we wanted to show, but I think there is not enough time. But I would request everyone to. It's a video which is available on YouTube. It's a TED Talk video by a gentleman named Simon Sinek. The topic is how leaders make you feel safe. I would urge everyone on this platform, please go ahead and have a look at that video. It's an amazing video, and it talks about how leaders can ensure that their teams feel safe in an environment. Yeah.
And I want to know, why is it that I don't have people that I work with like that? You know, in the military, they give medals to people who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that others may gain. In business, we give bonuses to people who are willing to sacrifice others so that we may gain. We have it back. Right? So I asked myself, where do people like this come from? And my initial conclusion was that they're just better people. That's why they're attracted to the military. These better people are attracted to this concept of service. But that's completely wrong. What I learned is that it's the environment. And if you get the environment right, every single one of us has the capacity to do these remarkable things, and more importantly, others have that capacity too. I've had the great honor of getting to meet some of these who we would call heroes, who've put themselves and put their lives at risk to save others. And I asked them, why would you do it? Why did you do it? And they all say the same thing, because they would have done it for me. It's this deep sense of trust and cooperation. So trust and cooperation are really important here. The problem with concepts of trust and cooperation is that they are feelings, they're not instructions. I can't simply say to you, trust me, and you will. I can't simply instruct two people to cooperate, and they will. It's not how it works, it's a feeling. So where does that feeling come from? If you go back 50,000 years to the Paleolithic era, to the early days of Homo sapien, what we find is that the world was filled with danger. All of these forces working very, very hard to kill us. Nothing personal. Whether it was the weather, lack of resources, maybe a saber-toothed tiger, all of these things working to reduce our lifespan. And so we evolved into social animals, where we live together and work together in what I call a circle of safety, inside the tribe, where we felt like we belong. And when we felt safe amongst our own, the natural reaction was trust and cooperation. There are inherent benefits to this. It means I can fall asleep at night and trust that someone from within my tribe will watch for danger. If we don't trust each other, if I don't trust you, that means you won't watch for danger. Bad system of survival. The modern day is exactly the same thing. The world is filled with danger, things that are trying to frustrate our lives or reduce our success, reduce our opportunity for success. It could be the ups and downs of an economy, the uncertainty of the stock market. It could be a new technology that renders your business model obsolete overnight. Or it could be your competition that is sometimes trying to kill you, it's sometimes trying to put you out of business, but at the very minimum is working hard to frustrate your growth and steal your business from you. We have no control over these forces. These are a constant and they're not going away. The only variable are the conditions inside the organization. And that's where leadership matters, because it's the leader that sets the tone. When a leader makes the choice to put the safety and lives of the people inside the organization first, to sacrifice their comforts and sacrifice the tangible results so that the people remain and feel safe and feel like they belong, remarkable things happen. I was flying on a trip, and I was witness to an incident where a passenger attempted to board before their number was called. And I watched the gate agent treat this man like he had broken the law, like a criminal. He was yelled at for attempting to board one group too soon. So I said something. I said, why do you have to treat us like cattle? Why can't you treat us like human beings? And this is exactly what she said to me. She said, sir, if I don't follow the rules, I could get in trouble or lose my job. All she was telling me is that she doesn't feel safe. All she was telling me is that she doesn't trust her leaders. The reason we like flying Southwest Airlines is not because they necessarily hire better people, it's because they don't fear their leaders. You see, if the conditions are wrong, we're forced to expend our own time and energy to protect ourselves from each other. And that inherently weakens the organization. When we feel safe inside the organization, we will naturally combine our talents and our strengths and work tirelessly to face the dangers outside and seize the opportunities. The closest analogy I can give to what a great leader is like being a parent. If you think about what being a great parent is, what do you want? What makes a great parent? We want to give our child opportunities, education, discipline them when necessary, all so that they can grow up and achieve more than we could for ourselves. Great leaders want exactly the same thing. They want to provide their people opportunity, education, discipline when necessary, build their self-confidence, give them the opportunity to try and fail, all so that they could achieve more than we could ever imagine for ourselves.
So one of the golden words which we would have learned in our school days, or our children are learning during their school days, that's a golden word which makes a lot of difference. And that's nothing but thank you. Thank you is a word which really, really helps relationships work. If as managers, we are able to thank our teams regularly, frequently for whatever contribution they do on a day-to-day basis. At times we may not be very happy with the contribution. Probably our expectation was 80% and our team members have delivered 50%. But still that does not stop us from thanking our team for delivering that 50%. We can tailor it in our way, but a little thanks can help us build that trust with our team members. And in case we are able to develop that, that trust is going to take all of us from transitioning from being just a manager to a leader.
Yeah, if you look at it, if you look at the concepts of positivity and negativity, I think when I saw this slide, what came to my mind was that positivity spreads and negativity multiplies. So it is really up to the leader to really be in the space of either positivity and negativity when you are having a conversation, because even a small amount of negativity gets amplified really fast when you're working with teams. Emotions get replicated very fast. But positivity is a space where a lot of work needs to be done. It spreads, no doubt. If you show positivity and optimism and give thanks to people when you're working with them, it will spread, no doubt. However, negativity is more easy and it is more rapid to spread. So whenever we are operating with team members, it is always, it's critical to be in that space of mind to spread more positivity. Challenges will always be there, but ensuring that the team understands that the manager is there to help and solve the challenges and is okay with the effort that is coming and being put, that speaks itself a lot for the team, and that creates motivation.
Great. So thank you so much. And once again, we would like to appreciate everyone. If you have any questions, any queries, we are open to listening to some of them now. In case somebody has to log out, here are our coordinates. You can always reach out to us for any queries, and would be happy to listen to any feedback, any queries you have now as well in the next 2 to 3 minutes.